And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you back to Language in a Global World, powered by JB Linguistics, where language learning meets culture, business, and the future of communication. I'm your host, JB, and today we're exploring how language shapes opportunity, builds international bridges, and prepares individuals and companies for global success. Today, we are joined by one of our awesome teachers, Vicky, who is amazing enough to take some of her free time out tonight to talk about an awesome topic within presentations. So we're gonna jump in and we're gonna have a good conversation about presentations. And I know Vicky's been working in linguistics and teaching English as a second language for going on 9 years now.
Yes, almost 9 years.
So background and knowledge and experience that I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear. And so we're gonna jump into this topic. Have you done a lot of teaching and presentations up to this point?
Hello, Jonathan. Yes, I have. In fact, a lot of my students, because they work for international companies, they have to give a lot of presentations, either in-house or to external companies, or to clients, or to customers. So it's a really common topic. And it's something I actually really enjoy teaching because we all present ourselves all the time. So it's just how can we do that in the best way, in the simplest, most effective way?
Have you had to do a presentation in like a language that's not your native language before?
I have, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. So
Oh.
I lived in France for a few years,
Mhm.
and I had been in France for 3 years, and I was working. I had a job teaching English online, but I wanted another job that was more in person, not so online. And I applied for a job with an agency teaching English to children after school. And the interview process was there were 5 of us there altogether. We had various activities to do, but we weren't told in advance that we were going to have to present ourselves. Now, as I said, I'd only been in France 3 months, and so my French I wasn't confident in
Yeah.
speaking at that point. So we were given 10 minutes to prepare. They wanted us to talk about our experiences, our teaching philosophy, where we would like to be in a few years' time, and what we were passionate about in teaching. Of course, my mind was completely empty. I couldn't think of anything. And 10 minutes later, my piece of paper was still blank. There was nothing on it. And fortunately, I wasn't the first one to go. So we were presenting to each other. So that the first lady went before me. While she was speaking, I literally wrote down all the phrases and expressions that she was saying. And
Wow.
then when it was my turn, I used those but added my own kind of experience. I somehow got through the presentation. I don't know how, but it was terrifying and probably terrible. It was not a good experience at all.
Was the school itself, were they understanding that you weren't a native speaker in French? Like,
Yes, they were great. And in fact, I did get the job, but I don't really know how.
oh my gosh, I love that. Sometimes when you feel the most like a fish out of water in a situation, and you navigate that, sometimes you end up showing just your true self and who you are. And sometimes employers see that, and
Yes.
that's a beautiful thing.
Yes, I think I smiled my way through and tried to make the best of it, and I think they understood.
What's a moment in your career where you saw a student really transform in their presenting? Was there like a situation or a student that you noticed transformed a lot?
I see a lot of transformation, but there's one student that really stands out for me. He was presenting his company to another company, and he wanted to practice doing that with me. He worked for a company that sells products that are very ethical and sustainable and very green. So he was trying to share, or he was sharing all of that information with. We went through phrases, he could use expressions. And so he went away, he practiced, he came and he gave me his presentation with a PowerPoint so I could see. And the only way I knew it had finished was because he got to the last slide and he said, "I finished." Okay. So after that, he could see a little bit of confusion. And so we talked through it and we talked about the fact that there was no clear introduction. He didn't signpost, so there was no first I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to talk about that. And then through the presentation, moving on to my next point, there was none of that vocabulary to finish. To sum up, I have talked about. So he added all of that in, completely changed the presentation. And he could see that I was following it a lot more clearly. So that gave him confidence. And he was like, "That's changed even my Italian presentations now." So I was like, great.
And I think like the more that you practice and the more that you get feedback on the presentations that you're doing helps you to navigate how you build a presentation in a different language and feeling comfortable to do that. Yeah, that's a huge reason why we have classes, right?
Yeah.
That's why we do classes with people, is to get that feedback, to get the correction, to have the ability to make course corrections so that they can succeed in their job and they can succeed in the work that they do.
Yeah, totally. And they can practice in a safe place. It doesn't matter if they make a mistake with me. That's not a problem. That's what I'm here for. But then they get the confidence that they think, actually, yes, I can do this. That's huge. That's huge.
As you're teaching presentations, how do you teach the questions and answer time at the end to, like, for a non-native speaker of a language, when you're getting questions that are impromptu, that are not pre-planned, how do you teach how to navigate and handle those questions?
I think I get scared about that in my own language, let alone in another language.
Yeah.
I think it's hard, isn't it? Preparing possible questions is great, but there's always going to be a question that you haven't prepared. So listening for those key words or phrases or expressions can be really helpful, and then double checking. So saying something like, "So if I understand you correctly, you are asking me," and then repeating it in the words that you understand. And then if it's still not right, you can say, "Come and see me after the presentation and we can talk about it more." Or, "Can I get back to you another time?" So they've got a strategy. They've got a get out of jail free card if they need one.
Yeah, and I'm also a fan of just saying, if I still don't understand it after repeating the question, just saying, "Do you mind giving that to me in more of a simple way?" Right? Can you make it more
Really
simple?
valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great too. But also just saying, like, let's follow up by email after the presentation. Like, let's do that. Because that's okay too. It gives you the opportunity to write a more thoughtful response to the question that's being asked. So I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and I think sometimes in the spur of the moment, when you're being asked that question, your mind goes blank, but kind of 20 seconds later, actually you've understood it and you're like, "Oh no, I can answer that question." So, yeah.
How do you teach diction in presentations, and how you ensure that someone is not leaning towards a more monotone tone of voice when they're giving a presentation?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think some people naturally have quite a monotone voice. So I think varying speed, changing the speed of which you're saying something, asking a question, because I think naturally if we ask a rhetorical question, our voice goes up at the end, and then adding a pause, giving a moment to think about it or to pause, and then adding a little bit more enthusiasm to your voice or smiling. That can change the way you're speaking too.
Yeah, I always like to give, like, if I'm teaching someone presentations in English, and they're not a native English speaker, I try to find examples of different diction in their own language. So that way they have the ability to hear what diction looks like in their own language. And then I try to simulate that in an English example through videos to say, look, like, this is what English diction differences look like, but these are differences within diction in your own language. Do you hear the difference? Like, do you hear how that goes up and down in that language? For instance, like with German, right? You have High German, but then when you look at Swiss German, they like sing it. Like their diction when they're speaking is like singing. It's completely different. And so presenting different dictions within different languages based on cultural or geographical location helps people to kind of gauge a little bit more in how they approach learning another language within diction.
Have you have you ever had a student who couldn't hear the difference?
I have. I have. Yeah, I've had one student, she was actually Russian, and she was we would do these lessons in diction and understanding it, and she just nothing would click. Nothing would click at all. And I finally, what I did was I had a speaker box and I turned up the bass on the speaker box and I had her put her hands on the table and
Ah,
feel the vibrations of the diction from the speaker box. And it turns out that she was tone deaf. She like couldn't hear the different tones, but she could feel
oh
it. And
wow.
she was like, "Oh, this is what you hear?" Like based off of her feeling, and she was so shocked. She was so shocked by it that she was like, "This is amazing." And so after that, she started practicing with vibrations and controlling her diction based off of the vibrations that she would hear. So it
Gosh,
was
that's
really
really
cool to see.
interesting.
But sometimes you just have to like think outside of the box to really help someone because you don't know like if they might have a medical reason behind um,
Absolutely.
their learning or whatever that might be, thinking outside of the box to present an alternative way to learn.
Yes. Yes,
But
definitely.
have you ever had that experience before? Where someone couldn't.
No, I don't think I have. I don't think I've had students that struggle with it,
Mhm.
but I think that was more with their confidence. They felt that it was strange having to change their tone and they felt that it wasn't natural. So it was, again, that was about practice, recording themselves, playing it back. And then over time, kind of that changed. They could hear it, they just didn't feel confident to do it.
And I'm a firm believer, I think language learning, I would say, in my personal opinion, I would say 40 to 50% of language learning is about confidence,
Oh,
right? To
yeah.
feel confident enough to speak and make mistakes and have correction and self-confidence in yourself to say, look, like I'm gonna speak even if I do make mistakes and I don't care, right? That self-confidence in itself is so valuable.
Totally. And I've got a little story which I'll just share quickly. When
Yeah.
we first lived in France, my husband didn't speak really good French to start with. And we went to, often we would go to a restaurant or a cafe and we would order a coffee. So my husband would practice and he would ask for a coffee. And often they would just look at me and then I would order the coffee and it was okay. And I said to him, "You're saying it right, but you're not saying it with enough confidence." Because he would kind of say, please, can I have a coffee? Whereas, please, can I have a coffee? But in French. And as soon as I said, just do it with confidence, pretend you're really fluent, just do it.
Yeah.
Changed
Really.
everything. They understood immediately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really,
Sometimes that shift in a mindset when
yeah,
you're presenting something in a different language, it creates not only understanding, but it creates a space of respect. Sometimes
yes,
with a lot of languages, they just need that respect, right? They
yeah,
need to know, like, I'm not going to respect you until I see that confidence. And until I respect you, I'm not going to respond. Yeah, and sometimes you have to like just really sometimes fake it till you make it. Like it
yes,
just that's what it is. Like when I was learning German, people, because in German society, so many people speak English and they have no issue just switching back and forth between German and English. And when I was learning German, I just was like, I don't speak English. And I would tell people, ich kann Sie nicht verstehen. Tut mir leid. Like I don't speak English. I'm so sorry. And it was that confidence to tell people in an everyday setting, like, I don't speak English. That was the moment that people were like, oh, he's actually really trying to learn German. And people had so much more respect for me in that moment, that they began to respond in a way that they didn't see me as a foreigner living in Germany. They saw me as someone who was learning German. So
brilliant.
sometimes you have to like give that, that firm, like, no, that's it. Like, you need to speak German. That's it. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah, it changes. Looking back at presentations, that confidence, when it's worked into presentations, it builds that respect from an audience perspective, where they
Definitely.
say, "Wow, okay." this person is really trying. Even if they make a mistake, their confidence is there.
Yes, yes. And I think if you, like you said, if you fake it, if you pretend, even if you're pretending, then you're halfway there. You're
Mhm.
halfway there because already you're looking confident, the audience will look confident back at you, and then that kind of gives you the confidence to speak.
Yeah, can you have you ever noticed like differences within cultures, within presentations?
I think there are many different points within presentations, aren't there? So, for example, the structure of presentations. I know that I think I read somewhere recently that American presentations, what do? They have their conclusion at the beginning.
Yeah,
Is that right? And then the German presentations, they build to the conclusion at the end. So I think that's
based off
an
of logic,
important.
right? Because Germans are very logical people,
Yes.
and they build off of the logic to present the conclusion at the end based off of the logic.
Yeah.
Whereas Americans tend to like say, "This is the conclusion, and I'm going to show you why."
Yeah, I quite like that. We don't do that in the UK, but I quite like that thinking.
The
Yeah.
American perspective?
Yes.
Yeah. Every culture has its different ways of presenting and showing the proof of it. Yeah, it's all about the structure that you take of it. For me, I
Absolutely.
think it's great both ways. Having lived most of my adult life in Germany, I've grown to be very German and how I present myself. And so I see a lot of the logic behind how Germans operate on a daily basis, both in business and in everyday life.
Yes.
But like every culture is different, right?
Absolutely.
I'm sure French culture, how they present themselves or they present topics within presentations is very different too.
I'm sure, absolutely. And I know that eye contact is another one, isn't it? Like in the Western culture, it's
Mhm.
seen as confidence. If you're looking at the audience, they understand that you are confident and they think, oh, you know what you are talking about. Hopefully, you do. Whereas I know that I think in some Asian cultures, it's not perceived as confidence. It can be seen as a little bit aggressive or not quite. So, yeah, I think you have to be aware when you're doing a presentation, you're giving a presentation, to be aware of those cultural differences,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah, I know within, like, for instance, Japanese culture, like, eye contact is not a sign of respect or
Okay,
confidence. It can be seen as aggressive
okay.
or, um, yeah, and so oftentimes when, you're working with Japanese cultures or Japanese companies, they will look at other things, right? They'll look at their presentation packet or they'll look at their computers or something else that they're working on instead of giving you direct eye contact because it is more uncomfortable for them culturally.
That's really interesting because I think if you are giving a presentation and you're used to having eye contact, it can make you feel like they're not interested or they're not focused or they're not following you, and so can make you feel less confident about what you're presenting. Whereas if you know that in advance, then you can continue your presentation knowing that it's okay, it's all going all right, I can continue.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't have to allow it to affect your confidence in a
Exactly.
negative way that keeps you from getting to the end conclusion that you desire to, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Humor differences within presentations. Some countries it's not okay to add humor into presentations, but other countries it's normal.
And the sense of humour can be very different. So you could tell a joke that you think and your colleagues thinks is great, but actually doesn't translate particularly well or doesn't translate at all. So
Mhm. And even
maybe,
even differences within the same language, but in different culture. For instance, between American and British culture,
oh yes,
in the UK, they have a lot of dark humor that for us as Americans, I'm like, don't really get it, but cool, but also like American dumb humor. A lot of British
yeah.
people are like, don't get that, but that's cool too, right? Even within the same language, we have
Yes,
differences within culture when it comes to humor and how we operate humor.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
I know this is so funny. I was giving a presentation in Germany once, and I added humor to it in English, and the Americans that were present at the meeting understood it. They thought it was so funny, but the Germans did not.
Oh, really?
They did not get it at all. And I had this a similar experience too when it came to translation. I was translating a meeting, and it was English, French, and German in the room, and somebody said we needed to please the people, and I translated into French in a way that was could be viewed at in English or German, it could be viewed at as inappropriate, but in French culture it was very funny, and the translation itself was very funny. And when I retranslated into German, the Germans thought it was horribly disrespectful and like not how I should be translating at all.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and the Americans were uncomfortable by it, right? They were uncomfortable by the English version of it. But every translation
Yes.
was systematically done for the culture that I was translating in. And so when people understood that and they understood the nuances behind the ways that you're using the language, it became understandable, right? But the
Okay.
French loved it. The
Yes.
French were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great. Like, I love this." Whereas all the other cultures were like, "Whoa, hold on a second. Like, we're in a business meeting. Like, what is this?" Right? So humor, how you present humor, either in presentations or even translation, can really affect the environment or the mood of the space that you're in.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Is there any quick tips that you would recommend for people to kind of practice ahead of time before presentations to feel a little bit more comfortable?
Totally. So I've got, well, my first one is practice, obviously, but don't practice in your head. Practice saying it out loud and practice doing it in the way you're going to do it. So if you're standing up, stand up, smile, stand tall, and imagine that you're talking to somebody. Practice on your colleagues, your friends. There's always, or sometimes, there's an expression or a word that you find difficult to say. And so through that practice, either the word becomes easier or it becomes a word that you cannot say. And so you find a synonym or you express it in a different way. But
Mm.
that practice smooths out all of those possible problems that you're going to do. Record yourself.
Mm.
It's horrible. We hate it. But be kind to yourself because if it was your friend, you would say to your friend, "Oh, that was really good, but you need to work on this."
Yeah.
And you have to look at it the same way when you are watching yourself back. Be kind to yourself. Yes, there will be things you don't like. That's okay. That's normal. But try to find the things that you need to work on. What am I looking for? Am I speaking too quickly? Is my pronunciation okay? Am I using all the correct points that I want to say? And just be kind to yourself. But
Mm.
recording yourself is really important. And finally, have a PowerPoint or something, because if you're really nervous and really stressed, really worried, that can give you structure and help you in case you forget. Because when you present in a different language, you feel nervous, you feel worried, you feel judged, you've worried you're going to forget the grammar. So having a PowerPoint can really help.
Absolutely. Because then you can always go back and look at it, right? If you get lost in a moment, you're like, hold on a second, where am I at? Right? And you
Yes,
can always kind of refer back to that and gives you that anchoring moment, right?
yes, absolutely. Moving on to my next point. What is my next point? Okay, so yes, having that structure can help.
Yeah. And I would also say, like, have fun,
Oh,
right?
yes,
Presentations don't have to be like a space where you have to be anxious or nervous. You can make it fun, right?
true.
Even in another country where they're a little bit more rigid or structured, there's still ways to make it fun. Include an icebreaker or, do something that connects to the audience in a way that is visual, right? Or physically tangible. Um,
Definitely.
there's a great presentation that I love teaching on. Um, it's on YouTube, and it's a gentleman. He presents immigration, and he does the presentation on immigration based off of the use of gumballs. And
Oh,
he presents it with containers of gumballs, and he goes through and he breaks down what global population and immigration looks like based off of the use of gumballs. And I think there's one moment in the presentation where he pours like a bunch of gumballs out and it just goes all over the stage. All the gumballs are everywhere on the stage. And the audience is focused. right? They're so focused on this presentation because there's tangible, something physical that they can not only see visually, but they can also kind of feel and hear. And that in itself draws people in a way that keeps their attention focused. And even if a presenter may be more monotone or maybe more structured in how they present, you can still incorporate things into a presentation that distracts from those things.
Totally, totally. And even if you are nervous and you make a mistake, you can alter it. So I was watching a presentation of a student who was practicing, and he was talking about risk, assessing risk in the work environment. And he had to present to his colleagues how to manage the risks within the office. And he talked about the office environment, and then he moved into the kitchen area. And he said, and now we're going to go into the chicken. And he said chicken rather than kitchen. And he saw me smile, and he laughed, and he said, ever since I was at school, when we learnt vocabulary for kitchen, the teacher said to us, it sounds like chicken, but don't get it confused, it's kitchen. And he said ever since that moment, he's always made the mistake. And so even though he failed, he made a mistake, he didn't fail, he made a mistake, he told a funny story. And the presentation continued, everybody laughed, everybody was interested, and it was a really successful presentation. So even if you make a mistake, people understand, they get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a similar story where a student made a mistake on a presentation, and we were presenting what we did over the weekend, and we had like a presentation on what we did on the weekend. And he said, yeah, I went out and I was writing whores over the weekend. And I said, excuse me, what? And he said, yeah, I was writing whores over the weekend. And I was like, can you write it on the board really quick? Like what that word is? And he wrote it, and it was horses. And he was trying to say I was writing horses over the weekend, but he kept saying it wrong. And when I explained what that word was, he was like, oh, and he looked so ashamed, so mortified as he was presenting. And he was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no, it's fine. And it was really funny. Like when he understood the differences between two words, a
Yes.
simple mistake like that, like for one single word, if you're in a professional setting, that could be a make or break on a deal, right? And so it was a great learning experience for him to recognize like words and pronunciation of words is important.
Yes.
And so it was a great learning experience for him. And he was the boss in the room for all of us
My
other
gosh.
colleagues. He was the boss. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And it was like, no, it's okay. Everybody makes mistakes sometimes. And
Yes.
this is part of learning experience, it's part of that growth. But everybody thought it was so funny when they understood the differences between the translations of the two words. Everybody was laughing hysterically and
So funny.
cracking up and
Yeah.
having a good time with it. And one of his colleagues, one of the people that worked underneath him, was like, "Did you go to the red light district last weekend? Like, what did you do?" And he was like, "No, no, I did it. I promise." So sometimes you just have, when you make mistakes, sometimes you just have to go with it, and you just have
Yeah.
to, learn from those moments, improve and become better, and not let them keep you from having fun and making it an enjoyable presentation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. You will make mistakes. That's life. That's part of life, but it's part
Yeah.
of learning.
But that's how you
Yes.
grow self-confidence, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your insights on presentations. And yeah, I appreciate you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. At JB Linguistics, we do specialize in small group virtual classes with certified educators and structured learning paths. Whether you're a homeschool family or a working professional or a corporate team, we have flexible programs designed for real progress. You can follow us on social media down below, inquire about language learning, certified testing, or translation services. We are here building global communication one lesson at a time. And once again, we thank you, Victoria, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing all of you on our next podcast session.
Thank you very much.